Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. Now, yesterday was Ash Wednesday, and I put the challenge out there for everyone, regardless of whether you have a Christian faith or not, to actually have a go at participating in Lent. This 2016 for the next 40 days or so as we lead up to Easter. Today I want to give you 10 practical tips for how I think you can really have a very fulfilling and meaningful period of Lent, how you can actually really get the most out of it. So here's the 10 tips, and forgive me if I keep looking down. I've written these down on my phone, so I have to keep looking down at the screen just to remind myself of what they are. So the first one is this. You need to approach Lent, I think, from an attitude of love. It can be all too common for people to look at Lent and say, oh, it's a really dour time of giving stuff up and having to do extra things and and I think we lose sight of the fact that really what should motivate us in Lent is an attitude of love, a love for Christ and what He's done for us, and that should motivate us in our attitude in wanting to make sacrifices and make self-gift of our lives. So if you want to have a really fulfilling Lent, I think it's got to be grounded in love. That's the place you've got to start from. Number two, prayer is obviously important, but I would say during Lent, here's a prime opportunity to actually perhaps change things up another gear and change the way in which you pray by really focusing on specific aspects related to Lent and that time of preparation before we head into Easter. So this is really about refocusing in on this particular season. So I would say make sure that your prayer is there's a shift of focus in your prayer as well. And one other thing I'd really encourage you to do is to seek a fruit of your prayer as well. So over this Lenten period, think about maybe one or two things that you really want to develop in your own life, an area of virtue perhaps that you really want to grow in, and begin to make those things a part of your prayer life and something that you can seek in your daily prayer over this Lenten period as well. So it's more focused on what's actually happening in your journeying, not just in the things you're giving up and the things you might be doing for others, but also the way in which you pray and hopefully you're starting each day with prayer. So the way in which you start your day is very grounded in the Lenten season as well. Number three, I would encourage you to get into some spiritual reading or reading about the lives of some saints or reading the writings of some saints or books about, Christian discipleship or things that are really, I think, going to nourish and refocus you spiritually. I think in many ways, if you start from an attitude of love with Lent, then I think it can be a great opportunity to really have a mini retreat period to yourself. So this 40 days becomes like a retreat. So set yourself a goal, maybe 15 minutes a day or half an hour, whatever it might be, that you're going to. I've set myself a goal of half an hour a day of focused reading in this regard, so that I can really begin to make the most of this period and try and grow in my spiritual life as these 40 days progress. Number four, make it meaningful. Whatever your sacrifice is or whatever the commitment of self-giving that you are making is, the thing that you're going to give up or the thing that you're going to do for others, make it meaningful. It's not really a sacrifice if you say, well, I'm going to give up going to the gym every day. I mean, unless you might be a real gym head, that might be a sacrifice, I don't know. But for probably most of us, that's more of a relief than a sacrifice. Or if you say something like, well, I'm going to give up eating caviar and having champagne every day for breakfast, when the last time you had caviar for breakfast was never. Obviously, there's no real sacrifice in there. So for the sacrifice to actually have some sort of meaning and depth and to actually be meaningful for you this Lent, it actually has to be a real sacrifice. So make sure that what you're doing is meaningful and is not just something that you're just chucking in there for the sake of it, and that is actually focused on giving of yourself in some way. Closely related to that, point number 5, make it simple. Often I think when the temptation is when Lent rolls around is we think that we have to overcomplicate it. We have to engage in massive acts. We have to give everything up in order for it to actually have meaning. Often it can be just that one thing we give up. It can be that one act that we commit ourselves to doing and consistently that really carries all the weight and is most beneficial in refocusing us and making space for time and helping us to be grateful and loving to God for the profound gift of His love on the cross. So it said, don't bite off more than you can chew. If you do that, if you say, right, I'm going to give up all food and all water, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to go and spend every night living on the street with the poor, and I'm going to give all my money away, then the chances are that what's going to happen is after a couple of days you're going to burn out, and then you are going to spend the next 35 days or so of Lent just wondering what happened, and it's not going to be that same important opportunity of growth and spiritual development and awareness and growth in your life, it's probably going to be a missed opportunity because of the fact that you just burn out because you try to do too much. So make it meaningful and make it simple. Next point is this. Whatever your goals are, whatever the commitments are you've made to give up a certain thing or to engage in an act of self-giving, something you're going to do extra over and above that for other people, don't go telling everyone. There's two reasons why this is a good idea. First of all, if you're a Christian, you understand the fact that we're not meant to boast about our good works. We're not meant to go around town bragging and telling everyone, hey, look at me, I'm practically just like Jesus. If Jesus was into giving up chocolate, then I would be just like Jesus, right? That's not the point of Lent. So the idea is you're not supposed to be bragging to everyone about what's going on. Good works and acts of self-sacrifice and charity are meant to be done in humility. So that's the first reason. And number two, the science of goal setting and goal achievement is pretty clear on this. If you set a particular goal or a particular commitment that you're going to engage in, and then you go around telling lots and lots of people, the science tells us that you are far less likely to actually see that commitment through than if you had kept it close and played your cards closer to your chest. So there's actually two really good reasons there to maybe not go around town telling everything about what you're going to do. Next point is this: write it down. Write down the commitments that you were going to make. I sat down on Tuesday, the day before Ash Wednesday, and I thought about, had a specific time of focusing on Lent and thinking, what am I actually going to do? What act of sacrifice am I going to make? And what act of self-giving am I going to engage in over this Lent? And I wrote them down. So writing them down is important. It helps to give a concrete reality to what you're doing. And the next point, which is closely related to why you write them down, is you need to revisit those commitments regularly throughout Lent. Lists, once again, this is about the science of leadership and goal setting and everything else. And the science tells us that lists are great, but only if you use them as a reference point. If you don't keep going back to those lists, those commitments you've made, those to-do lists that you write for yourself, they actually become meaningless very quickly, and you'll find that they actually stop guiding your decisions and the actions that you're engaged in. You get dragged along by other things instead. So if you've made a commitment to give something up or to do something extra each day or each week, make sure you go back and visit that commitment. Have a look at the piece of paper. Remind yourself. Stop and ask yourself, how am I going with this today? What do I need to think about in the day ahead to make sure that I can really fulfill this commitment that I've made? So keep revisiting it. One of the other things that's interesting about the latest management and leadership theory is this. They are telling us now that people who start their day at 100 miles an hour are actually less productive and less effective at achieving goals and seeing their commitments through than people who start their day with a period of solitude and silence. Now, obviously, as Christians, we've known this, and that's what our morning prayer and reflection and meditation should be all about. But the point is that if you want to have a really good Lent and you want to really hone in on those commitments, start each day by actually thinking about them in solitude and focusing yourself on those and thinking and preparing yourself to live out a more purposeful and directed, and you have a lot more intent around those goals and commitments rather than just being dragged along by whatever else happens to get busy during the day. And next thing you know, you've got to the end of another week and you've forgotten all about the commitments that you made for Lent. Next point is this, only a couple more to go. If you have made a commitment to give up something, to make a sacrifice, let's say you've decided to give up a wine for Lent or give up chocolate, and you know that you've got a function coming up where there's going to be sweets on offer or there's going to be wine, and you know that you're going to be tempted to sort of forego your commitment, then here's what I would encourage you to do. Before you even walk out the door to go to that event, this is not rocket science, by the way, have a plan in place. Recommit yourself to that sacrifice that you've made for Lent and have a plan in place. Now, don't forget, Sundays during Lent, they are feast days, so you don't have to, that thing that you've given up, you can actually have on Sunday. So if the event falls on a Sunday, no big deal. But if it falls on any other day of the week, before you even walk out the door, remind yourself of that commitment and have a little plan in place. What am I going to do if someone offers me a glass of wine and I've made this commitment to give up wine? Because you want your sacrifice to actually be meaningful, and for sacrifice to really carry meaning and weight, at the point when you are most tempted to give up on that, that's the point when the sacrifice becomes most real and carries its the most meaning and purpose in that particular action. So before you get out the door, have a little plan. What am I going to do if someone offers me a glass of wine? And think to yourself, right, well, I'm going to have a Coke instead, or I'm going to have a lemon lime and bitters, whatever it is. Have a little plan of attack for how you are going to navigate that situation, so you don't get to the end of the night and go, oh, bummer, I've actually just walked away from this commitment I made and I've done the thing that I said I wasn't going to do. So have a plan in advance. And the last point is this. Hold on just a second while I open up my phone, closed on me. The last point is this: have a little strategy and stored away in the back of your mind, just in case you forget about your Lenten commitment or you have a bad week and you just, things don't happen like they should. Have a little strategy in place for how you're going to deal with that moment and what you're going to do to get yourself back on track. And in that moment, here's what I encourage you to do. The last thing you want to do is sit in that moment where maybe you've forgotten what your commitment was, or you've been so busy you deliberately didn't give time to it. You just thought, other things have taken too much precedent. You get to the end of the week and you realize that your Lenten commitments have been completely forgotten. They've gone totally by the wayside, and you're really annoyed at yourself for having done that. Maybe you're a bit upset about that and you're feeling a bit down about it. Well, the first thing I would do is just say, okay, own it. It happened. We all make mistakes. It happened. But don't then organise a little pity party for one, and then sit around stewing and thinking, I failed, this is so terrible. What you need to do in that moment is stop asking yourself, how do I feel, how do I feel, how do I feel? Instead, you've got to stop and ask yourself this question: well, where do I actually want to get to from here? Where do I want to be at the end of Lent? What do I want to have achieved? And I guarantee you the answer that you give yourself will be something like, well, I want to have got back on track, and I want to have used the remaining days and weeks of Lent in a really meaningful and productive way as best as I possibly could, by living out those commitments again. So that's where you want to get to. Once again, remind yourself of that, and then say to yourself, okay, well, what do I need to do to get to that point where I want to be? And it's pretty simple, really. You just need to get back on the horse, get back on track, and carry on as you were. Yep, you might have slip-ups, but you know what? God's not sitting up in heaven going, oh my gosh, you failed, write them in the no column. That's not what's happening here. So just relax, get refocused, and make that commitment again. And I guarantee you, if you do that rather than just giving up and walking away, you're going to have a far more meaningful Lent this year. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow on The Daily.